shows with our friend Zach since spring. Eric?
Oh, I apologize. My mic was muted. But yeah,
Okay.
we're live now, George. Just a heads up.
Okay.
I would like to do another show with Zach at some point. I believe he mentioned to me in a comment that just whenever I'd like to come back on, just reach out to him. So I've been very busy. I've been working full time, kind of like 8 to 5 o'clock the last month and a half or so. But it's a seasonal job, so that's coming to an end. So I'll reach out to Zach sometime soon. So I would like to do another stream with him. He's doing great work over on his channel, exposing the Jesuits. And I recommend everyone check him out and subscribe to Gematria Effect News, Gematria Effect Sports, if they haven't already.
Oh, okay. So today, well, I mean, I realize it's now officially December the 8th, where both of you are. It is Tuesday the 8th of December, but it's still officially December the 7th where I am. So can we just address that rather quickly? Today is Pearl Harbor Day, or at least at least where I am.
Oh yeah, the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. No, do you want to go into that?
Sure. Well, I probably have covered this material before, so forgive me for being redundant. But the year before, in July 1940, the U.S. Congress passed something called the Two Ocean Navy Act, which built up the fleet in the Pacific and the Atlantic, and increased the size of the U.S. Navy by something like 2/3. And the two authors of that were Carl Vinson, I believe, in Nebraska, and David Ignatius Walsh. Walsh lived from 1872 to 1947. Walsh was noted for several things. One, he was the first Catholic senator from Massachusetts and the first Catholic governor. I'm not sure when I can go look up his dates. Walsh graduated from Holy Cross University in Worcestershire, Mass. So, also, one of the other elements of the Two Ocean Navy Act was it moved the U.S. Pacific Fleet from San Diego, California to the Hawaiian Territories at the time, a distance of approximately 1,700 nautical miles, 2,000 statute miles, or about 3,200 kilometers. So, had the U.S. Pacific Fleet been in Southern California, it would have been impossible for the Japanese to bomb it because they would not have had enough fuel to return. Oh, are you looking at? Now, here's another factoid about Walsh. He never married, and not to cast aspersions, but there are some allegations that he may have been a homosexual. I'm not trying to judge. So,
actually,
Eric,
George, now that you mentioned that, while my screen share's on, so people, if they want to find information on that, there's an accusation of double Jesuit trained David Walsh being homosexual, or part of actually like a Nazi homosexual underground. There's an accusation of. Actually, I'm just getting an echo off someone's mic there. I don't know if it's my mic. It looks like it went away now. But that was from Charles Hyham's book, Trading with the Enemy. I have a physical copy of it. If people go to my archive.org page, you can find the information. If you're seeing my screen, just type in the inside of the book, Walsh. And he is mentioned in this book, part of that underground plot. I also know that the ex-Catholic priest, James J. Murphy, brought up David Walsh's connections to the Nazis in an article, Clerical Fascism in the United States.
Oh, I just want to apologize.
Actually, it looks like, yeah, so this is, so if I'm just zooming in here this is an interesting disconnection with the Jesuit trained David Walsh in the Nazi plot. If you see on the screen here, this is from Hyham's book. The Nation magazine actually investigated at the time and concluded that Walsh did make contact with Nazi spies. And Hyham goes into more of the homosexual aspect of this as well. But it's great information, George. And just you mentioned that chairing this committee with Walsh, kind of predating to Pearl Harbor, moving the U.S. Pacific
Well,
Fleet.
and of course,
Was it, you say Congressman Carl Vinson that wrote the bill with Walsh? I'm just mentioning that because Carl Vinson, I'm holding a letter up here from Brigadier General Herbert C. Holdridge. I got like the laminate on it. But he wrote a letter to Congressman Carl Vinson calling him a traitor on September 18th, 1962, and accuses him of selling out America to the Pope and Wall Street. But what I just want to make, was it Vinson you mentioned who wrote the bill with Jesuit trained David Walsh?
Okay, I'm sorry, Eric. I just caught about maybe half of what you said over the last minute or so, because your audio is very choppy.
Oh, my audio's choppy. Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Yeah, I apologize for that. Oh, yeah, no worries. I was just gonna say, was the co-author of that bill with Jesuit trained David I. Walsh, Congressman Carl Vinson? I'm just mentioning that because U.S. Brigadier General Herbert C. Holdridge accused U.S. Congressman Carl Vinson of treason in a letter that I've uploaded that letter to my archive.org account too. If people want to see that, just type in Holdridge on the search bar.
Oh, excuse me, Eric.
Right here. Oh yeah, what's up, Alex?
I've got a topic to cover, and I think some of your listeners may find it a bit disturbing. Just giving you a heads up, it could be really well related to Johnny Cerrucci's Eaters of Children's book, but it touches into China.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we will go into that today for sure. Yeah, I know you mentioned you had some information on China you wanted to discuss today.
Yes. And it also discusses the fate of the Hong Kong protesters. So I'll let George finish first.
Yeah, we can actually just George, are you there, George? Just mic check before we transition into Hong Kong. Yeah, I think George did say the name Carl Vinson. I just wanted confirmation there. And I actually just on Hong Kong, interesting. I saw that they're now reporting like the 4th wave of COVID-19 in Hong Kong while this is going on too. Which is pretty ridiculous. Actually, and there's a photo of Carl Vinson with David I. Walsh. So those were the guys that wrote the bill. It looks like. It looks like George lagged out. I'll invite him back in. But yeah, Alex, if you want to start into the stuff you want to mention on China, go ahead.
Okay. When we were covering the Hong Kong protests, you know how some of the protesters gave themselves up to the police? Some of them could also have been very well kidnapped by the Chinese intelligence, if you know what I'm saying. Last weekend, a contact of mine who actually knows me on Twitter, he told me that some of the protesters who actually were taken up to the mainland, he mentioned if they're under 18, they could have been sold into either the sex industry or prostitution, or another one is for adoption. There are also foreign families from the US, Canada, and like New Zealand who go to China to adopt a child or children. The maximum adoption age in China under law is actually 18. And the cost to adopt a children can be around, I think, $100,000 as well. So, in other words, the selling of children in China is actually a business, and it's a very profitable one as well. I'm not sure, and I think it also ties into Johnny Cerrucci's book, The Eaters of Children, as well.
Well, absolutely. The Vatican just recently proclaimed that the Chinese society is the most that amplifies the best Catholic social teaching. That was none other than a Vatican Cardinal, Marcello Sarando, chairman of the Pontifical Academy of the Social Sciences, who pronounced that. So it definitely ties in. And, I'm also just thinking, well, when you're mentioning that, it's been well documented now with the recent China Tribunal Commission, looking into the organ harvesting, the forced organ harvesting. Like that's now been admitted that goes on in China. And that's why you can get organ donations within a week or two's time. While here in the West, you usually wait months, sometimes years, to get an organ transplant. But over in China, you can get organs in a week because they take the political prisoners, throw them in the concentration camps, and then murder them and harvest them for their organs. And the Vatican endorses that. It's very, to me, it's very similar to the Inquisition. And that's why I think you see the Roman Catholic Church and the Communist Chinese Party as close together as they are. Just going back to the pandemic, people can find a story back in like February, the Vatican sent a whole bunch of masks over to Communist China.
Oh yes, I did hear about it as well. So,
so clearly, they're working together.
Yes, I think In Goods couldn't make it to the stream tonight. While I think a few weeks back, I had a chat with In Goods. He found out how I mentioned Zhou Enlai is the founder of the Chinese intelligence apparatus. Oh, now In Goods has mentioned that Zhou Enlai himself could very well have been involved with the Jesuit order as well.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this relationship comes through Martin Lee's father, Jesuit-trained Roman Catholic Martin Lee, the founder of the Hong Kong Democratic Party, who was negotiating with Jesuit-trained Bill Clinton at the time that China was admitted into the World Trade Organization. But it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but we documented on our last stream that Martin Lee's father and Zhou Enlai being one of the founders of the Chinese Communist Party, they were friends with each other. That was documented by the New York Times. And then Martin Lee's father, he taught at the Jesuit Huayan College in Hong Kong. Is that it?
Yes, that's correct. Another thing I found.
So I'm just going to say, so with all this, the Jesuits doubtlessly did make connections. We've actually, while we're on the stream, this might be a good opportunity to bring up the WikiLeaks document I found on China, going into how it was documenting Nancy Pelosi's congressional delegation that took a trip to China to visit the Jesuit Archbishop of Shanghai, Archbishop Jin, in 2009. But they mentioned in that write-up how the Jesuit Teilhard de Chardin made contact with this Jesuit Archbishop Jin in China back in the 1940s. And Teilhard de Chardin, we have sources. Actually, you found the quote. It's up on my website that he actually made contact with Mao Zedong as well.
Correct.
So doubtlessly, the Jesuits were working with Zhou Enlai at this time as well.
Yes.
Yeah, keep going on. Great information.
Another thing I want to mention is that the U.S. Democrat Party, and I mean Dianne Feinstein, she's also herself to have been suspected to be working for the Chinese intelligence apparatus as well. And Nancy Pelosi is also being suspected as well. And on the Republican Party side, Mitch McConnell and his wife, Elaine Chao. So, in other words, the Chinese intelligence apparatus is heavily involved with the Democrats and Republicans.
I just mentioned there's a Jesuit connection with McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao. The Jesuits at Georgetown gave her an honorary degree not too long ago, before she was made Secretary of Transportation. She's still there. And I have this up on my screen here. This is the document that I mentioned. That as we're talking, we'll bring up some information from this document because this was very revealing. This was written by like an internal document from the U.S. State Department. It was written by. Let me just get the author. His name is down here. Simon Schustad, who was acting United States Consul General in Shanghai. He was the guy that wrote this report. But just incredible, like Barack Obama, for like they would send tapes of Barack Obama's speeches to this Jesuit archbishop in Shanghai, who was very inspired by Barack Obama's speeches. Yeah, so here's like the summary here. Shanghai Catholic Bishop Jin welcomes Speaker Pelosi. You know, Nancy Pelosi is like a Jesuit test. People should watch the videos I have if you're on my channel. I have a video of her just kind of just spinelessly like saying like how excited she was when she got to see Jesuit Pope Francis at his delegation back in 2013. But Shanghai Catholic Bishop Jin welcomes Speaker Pelosi, and Nancy Pelosi's husband Paul Pelosi is on the board of directors at Jesuit Georgetown University. Speaker Pelosi and your delegation in their first meeting following arrival in China on May 24th, this is 2009, and proclaimed himself to be satisfied with the degree of religious freedom now existing in China, which is, zero. The Vatican historically doesn't support any religious freedom outside of the freedom of their own Roman Catholic Church. He praised the Jesuit Archbishop Jin praised President Obama's May commencement speech at Notre Dame for its open-mindedness and asked that his best wishes in a book about the Diocese of Shanghai be presented to the president. I'll just read some of the points I have bulleted. Then you, Alex, jump in and make comments whenever you want. Just
okay.
Cut me off when something interests you. But just the Bishop Jin expressed great admiration for the American people and for the Catholic Church in the United States, which has so generously assisted the Diocese of Shanghai. That's like the end of the summary there. But you see here the description of the meeting. 93-year-old Bishop Aloysius Jin welcomed U.S. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi and delegation at an hour-long meeting in his quarters near St. Ignatius Cathedral. So that would be at a Jesuit church that this high-profile meeting took place.
Okay. If you mind to go, I've got a pre-read 3 that speaks about Dianne Feinstein's husband. It was back from an article in 1995.
You put that in the Discord?
No, I mean in the Jesuit World Order.
Is that your latest post?
Just search Dianne Feinstein.
Oh, Feinstein.
Yeah. Just search Feinstein, it should appear.
Okay, right here.
Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi, this one, yeah. Yeah. Since it's one of the 1997. Dianne Feinstein, Elaine Chao, Mitch McConnell have all been suspected to be working for the Chinese intelligence apparatus as well.
This makes a lot of sense. This is right around the same time that Bill Clinton gave like top quantum supercomputers to communist China for basically nothing. He gave them all the high patents, gave them all the technology.
May I also?
I believe that was 1996. So this is right in around that time. This is of course 1996. I think was the year that China came into the World Trade Organization.
Yes. May I also add, Elaine Chao's, sister is also on the board of directors for the Bank of China as well.
Interesting. So that's Elaine Chao's sister?
Yes.
Elaine Chao, of course, who got her honorary degree at Jesuit Georgetown.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. Her sister's on the board of the Bank of China. Actually, speaking of the Bank of China, we'll go back to this article here, Alex, but I don't think we covered this in the last stream we did on China, just talking about the Jesuits in China and Hong Kong. But this kind of just shows historically how the order has been involved with China in the 21st century. But this was Jesuit-trained Knight of Malta Opus Dei member Francis K. Stankard, who I got a photo of him here with the Premier of China, Chou Enlai. And this would have been in 1973, this trip right here.
That's 3 years before Zhou Enlai's death.
Well, it was right before Zhou Enlai's death. Interesting.
Yeah.
He died,
Okay.
so he died in 73.
Zhou Enlai died in 1976.
76, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. Because it just the way it ended up working out just is after the Communist Revolution, which again was completely controlled by the Jesuits. And actually, I document that here. That's why the Office of Strategic Services gave military hardware to the communist Chinese to make sure that they would win the Civil War. And of course, they were funding and arming Chiang Kai-shek on the other side. And that's why the Jesuits gifted Chiang Kai-shek the island of Taiwan, where they now have a Jesuit school there in Taiwan. Let me just get the name of that. It's a pretty prominent school, the university. I just get the name of that there. Fujian Catholic University. So immediately after, the Catholic Church, they were controlling both sides of this conflict. But but for that reason, that's why I documented that Knight of Malta, William quote Wild Bill Donovan, Knight of Malta, Knight of Saint Sylvester, who was in charge of the Office of Strategic Services when the transfer of military hardware took place from the U.S. military to the communist Chinese rebels at the time. But that's documented here in an American military journal, and the article is called "The OSS in Support of the Chinese Communists." It was written by a U.S. Colonel, William C. Spratcher. But at the time of after the revolution, for a brief period from 1949 to 1973, the Communist Party officially did no business with outside or with Western American banks. In particular, that's what this New York Times article highlights. But you see here this is reported July 5th, 1973, an article titled "Chase Agrees to be Agent for Bank of China in the U.S." Chase Manhattan Bank will represent the Bank of China in the United States under an agreement concluded by David Rockefeller, Chase Manhattan chairman, during a 10-day visit to China. It's just very interesting that Rockefeller took with him on his visit Francis X. Stankard. And you see here where I'm highlighting on the screen, this guy was super connected to the Jesuits. And he was their top international banker at Chase Manhattan. He was executive vice president for international banking at Chase Manhattan from 1975 to 1971. Stankard was also chairman of the board at Chase Manhattan Overseas Banking Corporation. 1987 to 1992, 1953, graduate of the Jesuit College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. He was a Jesuit Holy Cross trustee. From 1984 to 1992, Stankard also served as a gift chair for every reunion year for the class of 1953 at Jesuit Holy Cross and as a class agent. He was a member of the Jesuit Holy Cross Advisory Board since its inception in 2006, national chair of the Jesuit Holy Cross Fund from 1980 to 1983, and an inaugural member of the Jesuit Holy Cross Leadership Council of New York, established in 1998. He was a Knight of Malta, an elite Roman Catholic knighthood headed by a Grand Master who works at the behest of the Pope. And that description comes from Chase Bank's own website. It's very telling that David Rockefeller took this guy with him on his trip to China. You see, Stankard was also documented to be a Knight of Malta. And of course, David Rockefeller co-founded the Trilateral Commission in 1973, which I have a photo here of the entire Trilateral Commission. Trilateral Commission is a huge part of the agenda of building up China's current economic and military power. Here's a photo of Pope John Paul II with the entire Trilateral Commission in the Vatican, April 18th, 1983. But the guys David Rockefeller, who took this Jesuit banker with him on his trip to China in 1973, David Rockefeller, the guys who co-founded the Trilateral Commission with him were two Jesuit-trained individuals. One being Zbigniew Brzezinski, who of course went to Jesuit Loyola High School in Montreal. And there was Tadashi Yamamoto, this guy's an interesting figure. He's essentially like a lay Jesuit. He went to Jesuit Sophia University and Jesuit Marquette University. And this guy's probably the most important figure in post-World War II Japanese commerce. So those are just some interesting side facts. But it shows that the Jesuits have been actively involved in China for some time. Going back hundreds of years, really back to the Jesuit Matteo Ricci. I recommend people read Theodore Greisinger's book. I got it up here. Theodore Greisinger's book on the history of the Jesuits. Let me just right here. The Jesuits. There's a chapter on China in this book, which is probably about 60 to 70 pages, which I recommend everyone read. This was written in 1885. This goes back to the 1600s when the Jesuits were first reaching China, and now the Jesuits are very involved in creating the Chinese Confucianism philosophies. And he doesn't mention this specifically, but the Jesuits were the first individuals to translate the works of Lao Tzu. That they were culturally kind of conquering China at the same time. It was, infiltrating all aspects of Chinese society back in the 1600s. But this book here by Theodore Greisinger has lots of information on China. People can read this for free on my archive.org. But yeah, I've been talking for a while. If you want to jump in, feel free.
Okay. There's something I want to add that I don't think Eric John Phelps has ever covered on Ho Chi Minh and Zhou Enlai. Is what I want to make aware is how I've spoken about the Whampoa Military Academy in Guangzhou. I was looking into Ho Chi Minh. Guess who actually taught communism to Ho Chi Minh at the Whampoa Military Academy? It was Zhou Enlai.
Oh, that's very interesting. You can see how the whole thing is controlled completely because Ho Chi Minh, of course, received truckloads of American weapons right after the U.S. After the U.S. was leaving Indochina, World War II, getting ready for the Korean War. Fletcher Prouty has a lot of information on that in his two books. So Ho Chi Minh was being trained by Chinese communists while simultaneously being armed by the U.S. military. And Avro Manhattan is interesting in his book, The Vietnam, Why Did We Go, which people can also read on my archive.org page for free. I believe Ho Chi Minh actually was like they created a special Catholic archdiocese in Vietnam or North Vietnam at the time. But this was a big deal because this was, again, for the masses. They don't realize the Vatican created communism. Here you got the Vatican in a communist, quote unquote, secular society creating an archdiocese. But Ho Chi Minh, very interesting connection with him and Zhou Enlai. And showing how the conflict was. Fletcher Prouty did refer to it as a 30 years war, the war in Vietnam. And of course, the Jesuits, historically, completely ran the 30 years war. There's all sorts of historical information on that. Actually, look right here. Avro Manhattan, look what he says on page. He doesn't name the Catholic priest, but look what Avro Manhattan says on page 62 of his book, Vietnam, Why Did We Go? He says, Ho Chi Minh himself had a Catholic bishop as his chief advisor. Oh, there you go.
Now, can I mention also, Martin Lee has written a memoir about himself, and I don't think the book has ever been translated into English. In the book, he admits that Zhou Enlai tried to convert his father into a communist. And
of course, this is Martin Lee's father. Do you have the name of his father? His father was the guy who taught at Jesuit Wayang College. Who was friends with Zhou Enlai.
Hang on, I'll find you the link. Hang on. I'll see if I can find you the link. Hang on.
Actually, and just while you're pulling that link up, I just wanted to show another example of how the Vatican was very influential in Indochina at this time. This was the president of Japan that was installed right after World War II, Shigeru Yoshida. This guy was actually like a secret Roman Catholic the entire duration of the war. He died in 1967. He was baptized on his deathbed, having hid his Catholicism throughout most of his life. He was Prime Minister of Japan, 1948, 1957. And, you know, I'm sure everyone's seen the photo. I'm sure who watched this channel of Jesuit priest Edmund Walsh and U.S. General Douglas MacArthur at the Japanese Parliament in 1947. But there you go. Like the Prime Minister of Japan was, installed. That was installed was a Roman Catholic, and this is in a non-Catholic country. You know, much like how Japan they installed Ngo Dinh Diem right around the same time. Actually, 1955, Diem was installed.
I've sent you the link on Discord, Eric.
On Discord here.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
right here.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, perfect. And here's the father. Or here's a photo here.
Yeah, that's his dad.
Lee Wen Yo.
Yeah, Lee Yin Wo.
Lee Wen Yo. Okay, Lee Wen Yo. Oh, great research, Alex. And again, of course, Martin Lee. I don't think we mentioned this. Like we brought up his Catholic connections repeatedly on the first show we did, but Martin Lee himself was also a student at the Jesuit Huayan College in Hong Kong. We brought up how there's two of them there.
Correct.
I think Huayan. There's the Huayan College and Huayan College Kowloon.
Can I also mention after 1949, when the communists when Mao took over China, Zhou Enlai repeatedly tried to send people to Hong Kong to recruit Martin Lee's father as well. But instead, they were more successful with the son, because in 1967, Martin Lee was brought up to Beijing.
Yeah, and you got documented here too. One of Martin Lee's mentors also went to the Jesuit college, Dr.
Correct.
Patrick Yu.
Correct.
Celebrated trial and appellate lawyer in Hong Kong.
Correct.
Offered a judgeship on the Supreme Court of Hong Kong. He's obviously connected. Wrote an autobiography. Cousin of former Chief Justice of Singapore. So here you're seeing like kind of like the formations of aristocracy or the power elite operating in the Asian region, much like how it is in America. You know, judges, politicians, and CEOs and bankers are cousins and related to each other. It's a huge system of nepotism, and of course, the papacy is where nepotism like originates from, because it'd be like the Pope nominates all of his like brothers and cousins to make them cardinals, and he gives them all the wealth of the society. Because the Pope owned everything back then, of course, in the Dark Ages. Much like kind of covertly does now through the legal system. We won't go into that, but nothing has really changed. Technically, if you really want to go into the weeds of the legal fiction, the Pope still holds lots of legal title today. But it's a great find with Martin Lee's mentor here too, Dr. Patrick Yu. It says right on his Wikipedia, before attending Huayan College, Hong Kong, a prominent Jesuit high school in Hong Kong, right there. And he then went to the University of Hong Kong.
I've got another huge.
And actually, just very mentioningly, just I think this is just worth mentioning. Yu served with British Naval Intelligence. This is Martin Lee's mentor, and was commissioned as an officer in the intelligence corps of the Army of the Republic of China. That's very interesting. This guy fought with Chiang Kai-shek's forces.
Correct. And I've got another huge find for you. At the Chinese University of Hong Kong, just hang on. I just need to pull it up. Just hang on.
Oh no! Are you gonna send it through the Discord?
Yeah, I am. There is a if you want to show your audiences, there is a video of a siege that took place last year at the same area. Just hang on. I've just sent it to you on Discord. It's called the Battle of the Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Yeah, sharing my screen now.
Hang on.
So there's audio. Just want to make sure I got my audio on.
Hang on. The Battle of CHK that took part during the protest last year.
This took part during the Hong Kong protests?
Yeah.
And here's a headline of an article: Jesuits to head Center for Catholic Studies at the Chinese University of Hong Kong.
Yeah.
The center is part of the Department of Cultural and Religious Studies at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Reconciliation and discernment, which are very dear to Pope Francis, will be among the topics to be studied. Interesting. Did you say do you want to put this on this video here?
Yeah.
Is there a timestamp you want us to start at, or just right from the beginning?
Just show probably the first few minutes of it. These are the Hong Kong police. Now, what I want to explain is that during the protest last year, there were more than 100 students reported missing after the siege. If you want to, hang on, feel free to start the video a bit. These people are the Hong Kong police's part of their special duty squad. We'll get started, and I just want to mention too this: the Jesuit general, none other than Arturo Sosa, SJ, the Superior General of the Jesuits, or the Black Pope. He made a trip to Hong Kong right at the right as these protests were at their most intensity. I believe what that was last August. We brought that story up on the first stream we did. So you got the Black Pope was in Hong Kong when this was going down. I think this was around November. This was around
November?
Yeah.
Okay, No, thanks for the correction there. Yeah, and people can find that article right on the Jesuit general's website. The SJ Curia. Or people just type it on the Google search bar. Arturo Sosa visits Hong Kong 2019. You'll find that information. Are you saying you want to start this from the beginning, Alex?
Yeah, just show the first few minutes so the viewers have a clue what happened there. Because
見到其實喺前面嘅示威者啦，開咗個遮啊，遮陣咧就係成個高牆啊。警告，注意自己安全，唔好咁近我哋起嚟。因為你哋呢一個就係我哋嘅反抗，都係警方行動區，已多次要求你哋保持適當距離，要求你哋保持適當嘅距離。我見到呢個示威者咧，就將你哋嘅防線啦，垃圾桶咧就繼續向前推緊呢個警員，係咪啊？咁啊，現場警員咧不斷咧就叫呢個採訪嘅記者上翻嚟，咁啊走啊！咁啊現場開槍，咁啊開咗，咁啊現場發射咗呢個出嚟啊！咁啊亦都感覺到身後邊有好多磚頭咧就飛落嚟，跌咗身頭啊！係啦，咁啊見到喺斜坡嗰度咧就係不斷有啲磚頭飛落嚟啦，係亦都見到有示威者掟汽油彈啊！係啊，係咁喺現場咧就不斷咧就發放呢個橡膠子彈同埋呢個催淚彈啦。咁我就係見到示威者嘅防線係冇退讓嘅，不斷向前攻啊！係見到有汽油彈掟咗過嚟啊，不過係冇爆到佢掟到警員，係見到有警員係掟咗手擲嘅催淚彈過去啦。 咁啊，其實嗰度係有好多嘅記者喺嗰度噶，係有部分嘅催淚彈頭咧，係由示威者嗰度掟翻過嚟警方嘅方向。
Zane, you want to jump in and comment? Yeah, this is very militaristic, to say the least. The Jesuits in the Catholic Church, that's what they ultimately want in society. They want, a military dictatorship, a militarized police. And I just think, the protest, there's been historical, we brought it up too that, the CIA and the Jesuits and the Catholic Church were, backing the protesters themselves to kind of lead them into the slaughter, to then justify the Hong Kong police force in communist China going to a more brute, militarized, authoritarian response. Hence they passed the national security law.
Okay.
Et cetera, et cetera.
From what I'm aware, the protesters used an instant messaging service called Telegram, and they had their own forum. From what I have seen, it is reasonable to suggest both the Telegram instant messaging service and their forums were taken over by the Jesuit-controlled Chinese intelligence apparatus. I'm going to state to your viewers, the university siege in Hong Kong was instigated by the Jesuit-controlled Chinese intelligence apparatus. During those protests, there were allegations that the people who were throwing petrol bombs were either CIA or Chinese intelligence apparatus provocateurs themselves. And there were most certainly allegations that the CIA was helping the Chinese intelligence apparatus kidnap children as well. But these were not reported by the media. Oh, Eric, are you there?
Great information. Just taking it all in. And I'd say it's very similar to how just in the U.S., right, in the aftermath of the George Floyd protest, the Jesuits and the CIA were wanting people to go out on the streets and protest so they could justify, again, a further militarized and authoritarian police response. So that's what the Jesuits want. They want to create police states worldwide. But I'd ask the viewers, why do you think a Jesuit professor at Georgetown University, Viet Dinh, was the guy who drafted the U.S. Patriot Act? Which completely destroys the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They're completely antithetical to each other. But I'd say, after the George Floyd protest, there's documented, there's videos all over this. They had bricks staged in all these big American cities. They had pallets of bricks ready for the protesters to go out and to use them to throw, to loot, to burn stuff, to create as much chaos as possible, so that you could have a more militarized police response. And it just further conditions the American public to living in a police state. I see the same tactic used in China on a more on a more violent scale.
May I also add, there were allegations that the People's Armed Police was involved. The People's Armed Police is the Chinese Communist Party's paramilitary, and they're more elite than the Hong Kong police themselves. Oh, Eric, are you there?
Hello, Eric. Hello, Alex. I'm back.
Oh, nice to see you, George. Back. Yeah, I thought you were gonna keep going, Alex. And it just looks like Nick is asking in the chat. Just are there some articles or sources or journals out there that are documenting or bringing up the missing protesters? Just that people in the chat want to look up some more information on those missing Hong Kong protesters.
The only person who I can recommend, I'll just DM you the link, Eric. Hang on. Because it's not really covered, the media really. Hang on. I'll send you the link. Oh, Eric, are you there?
Well, I'm here. I'm pulling up with it from Twitter.
Yeah. Pull that link up. That guy's the person who goes by Nemesis 968-66609. He's got some pretty good information. Hang on.
So,
And of
Eric,
course, it is people, and the same people. And George, I'm sure you've heard this. Like Jesuit Joe Biden speaking on the Chinese communists, he said they're not bad folks.
Eric, I've just sent you another link. You know those people who were throwing petrol bombs at the police arm? Well, it's been disclosed that those people throwing petrol bombs at the police were not protesters. They were intelligence assets themselves, either working for the Chinese intelligence apparatus or the CIA.
Yeah, this isn't in particular. Okay, right here.
Yeah.
A lot of people know what you did, filming the fire set by MSSUCs.
Can I mention what MSSUCs are? They are Chinese intelligence apparatus undercover agents.
Oh, okay, I see. Oh, interesting. We'll get George in here talking, but I'm sure that I'm sure there's people out there writing about it. If people are going missing, doubtlessly there's going to be reports of that. So I'll find something to put in the chat to lead the viewers into further reading and research down this topic. It's a very interesting topic, and it's the same false flag tactics really that operate in the U.S. Even it's kind of mainstream now. Even like Glenn Greenwald, has articles out showing how the FBI gets involved in all sorts of phony sting operations. Creating violence and chaos to again, create a climate where you can pass more invasive national security laws. You're seeing the same tactic at work here in China.
Before I
use it all over.
Before I let George jump in, I've got something to mention. Another thing is that the Jesuits have a second insurgency going on at the US West and East Coast, and also the West Coast of Canada. Now, that insurgency is by sending Chinese people from China, and I suspect some of them could be Catholics as well, to settle in places like, I think, British Columbia and the US West Coast and the East Coast. Oh.
Oh, is that? Did you got more? I thought you were still going again. I was saying, feel free to just ramble a bit.
Okay.
I do that quite a bit.
There is also the Canadian. Are you familiar with something called the Sidewinder Report, Eric?
Oh, the Sidewinder. Yes, actually, and you did a great post on that too in the Jesuit World Order page.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a 1997 RCMP report warning about how the Chinese were making great advancements into the Canadian economy primarily through what I read, creating like a Canadian, a Chinese dummy corporation under a Canadian legal title, and then they funnel all of their the cash, funnel all the cash and fund all these various projects. And it's been historical that the Chinese have been buying up like assets in the Canadian oil sands. All sorts of natural resources.
I want to add that the Canadian part. I'm not sure the biggest two of the political parties in Canada are also infiltrated by the Chinese intelligence apparatus. Yeah, this is the one. We do. Yeah, this is before the this one that took place around November during the university siege.
Oh, was my mic muted there? I was just going to say that here's the article here from an establishment source, The Sun, UK, that there's concerns that China is shipping Hong Kong protesters to detention camps because the students quote go missing.
Can I mention it won't just be detention camps? Some of them can be sold as well for actual money.
Oh, sure, yes, open slave markets. Absolutely, that's a big business.
Okay, could I just mention something, Eric? I realize it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning Eastern. A couple things. In order for them to pull off, they, being the Jesuits, the Counter-Reformation, whatever we want to say, current projects, they're commonly called the Corona virus, COVID-19, covert 1984, whatever call it. They need several elements. Orchestrate this. One,
We lost your audio there, George. Mic check. Yeah, right at you're going into the elements that the Jesuits need to create to maintain the coronavirus deception. Right, looks like we might have lost George's audio there.
Oh, can I also add that in the Chinese are you familiar with a group called the Falun Gong, Eric?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'll see if I can pull up the post. I found out that. Are you familiar with something called the Matteo Ricci Center?
Matteo Ricci Center.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of that. Is that? I am aware though that Matteo Ricci's got statues of himself all over China, and of course he was like the personal astrologer and philosopher to numerous Chinese emperors back in the 1600s. But is that like kind of like an ecumenical spiritual center for the Falun Gong practitioners?
No, but I found out that there is a supreme Jesuit that's involved with the Falun Gong. Hang on, I'll just send you the link.
Oh, that's great. So that's through the Matteo Ricci Center, San Francisco Matteo Ricci. Actually, just speaking on I'm not sure if you can hear me if you're back, George. Just read some coronavirus tyranny with the Jesuits. The mayor of San Francisco, London Breed, who was educated by the Jesuits at the University of San Francisco there. But the mayor of San Francisco was just caught eating at the same like $400 a plate restaurant that the Jesuit-trained governor of California, Gavin Newsom, was eating at. And the Jesuit-trained mayor, London Breed, was caught eating at this like $400 a plate dinner, like without her masks on, with all of her rich friends. She was caught doing this after issuing an edict to lock down the city of San Francisco, telling the plebeians and slaves that they can't go out in public without a mask, and that you're like a domestic terrorist if you don't put on your mask. So, the hypocrisy is pretty profound. And again, I'll tell people the word Jesuitism literally means hypocrisy in the dictionary. If you want a reference for that, it's Webster's 1828 dictionary. Look at the word Jesuitism. It literally means to be deceptive and to be hypocritical. So, you know, that ultimately exemplifies all of the behavior we're seeing of the elites or the patricians across the world. And of course, the Jesuits and the Dutch Jesuits wrote like a phony letter channeling Ignatius Loyola a few months ago. But they said that we all need to, according to Ignatius Loyola in this channeled letter from the Dutch Jesuits, we all need to obey the medical authorities as if it were God himself. So, you know, that explains, you know, the mass hysteria that we're seeing all across society, because we're just sheepishly, you know, going along with the Jesuitical medical advice. But yeah, honestly, if we can't get George back in here in a couple minutes, I'm probably just gonna wrap it up because I am working tomorrow morning. But is there anything else you wanted to mention before we conclude?
I wanted to mention that the Falun Gong, they also, you know, one of the founders, Li Hongzhi. Now, this, I think many of your listeners might find this a bit ironic. The founder of the Falun Gong served with the Chinese army.
That's a little ironic, just because the Falun, they've been historically persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party.
Oh, there was a bit of jittering going on.
Well, I'm just saying that's ironic because the Falun Gongs have been historically prosecuted by the Chinese Communist Party.
Hello, Eric. Hello, Alex.
Hey, George. Welcome back.
And I've sent you another link as well. It's called yeah, they are also based in Dragon Springs in New York as well.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'm pulling up those Jesuits pages here that runs this. Benoit Vermander, S.J.
Yes.
He runs the Taipei Ricci Institute.
He's also involved with Fujian University in Taipei.
Interesting. Yeah, this guy's written quite a has a big output on the on China. Seems to be China as well. He writes about, you know, very interesting. You know, that's how the Jesuits operate. They have, you know, experts on each part of the world. They have Jesuits assigned to China, Jesuits assigned to, you know, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, North America, South America, all kind of specialized studying, you know, the religious, economic, sociological history of all these countries to amass all the information they can to put it into their massive intelligence collecting system. That's why E. Howard Hunt, CIA agent, said the Jesuits formed the greatest intelligence service in the world and always have. You know, this is a good find here, though, Alex, with the this Taipei Ricci Institute. Great stuff. And this guy's a French Jesuit who's running this.
There was a bit of jittering going on just before again.
Well, I was just saying, great work in pulling this up with this Taipei Ricci Institute. And you mentioned kind of falls into the New Age movement, ultimately their spiritual outlook. You know, good stuff.
Some of the ex-practitioners have said that the Falun Gong practices exorcism, which I found something's quite wrong, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, to me, you know, it screams of a classic, you know, controlled movement where I'm sure that the Falun Gongs at the bottom may think that, you know, they're rebelling against the spiritual tyranny of the Chinese Communist Party, but at the very top, you know, all their leaders are co-opted. You know, much like how it is in Palestine, all the top Palestinian leaders are on the CIA payroll. They're selling a false hope to their sheep followers that they're gonna, you know, win the crusade against Israel. You know, same type of game being played.
Oh, may I add something that's currently happening in New Zealand? And I'm not sure it might be interesting for your listeners.
Yeah, we could do that quick before we go. Just I do want to get going here just because I got to be up in like 5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe if you want to bring that up, and then George, if you want to bring something up to close, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah.
That work for you guys?
Okay.
Okay, the New Zealand government recently made so-called medical cannabis legal, but what has now come open is that the Jesuit-controlled pharmaceutical companies in New Zealand are trying to take over the medical cannabis market. Over at where I live, if we qualify for medical cannabis, we have to go see a doctor, which means we have to go near the Jesuit Inquisition. And if the doctor approves a cease, the next problem is how do we afford it? Now, if we look into so-called medical cannabis, a product per month can cost as much as $1,500, which is out of affordability range. And for example, you've got pharmaceutical
I'd
companies.
say that's the Jesuits. You got to keep the people dependent on the big pharma poison.
Yes, and at the same time, in New Zealand, we've got people who make cannabis oil serving prison sentences from up to 10 to even 20 years. So, in other words,
Absolutely. Same thing in America. Many southern states, you got people in jail for 10 to 20 years for possession of marijuana, or I shouldn't say marijuana, that's the legal term, but possession of a tiny amount of weed, minuscule amounts. Talking about like a joint or two or a gram or two, you can go to jail for astronomical sentences, even in the U.S. And there's just kind of this incredible gray area too, where it's legal in certain states, but it's illegal federally. So you can be in or you can be in Colorado, smoking quote unquote legal weed, and then a ATF or FBI agent can arrest you and put you in jail, even if it's legal in your state. So definitely there's an agenda. Even I noticed here in Canada, the industry is being monopolized by 3 or 4 companies, who's then going to be able to dictate prices. Monopolies. Rome is the mother of all monopolies. They want to create, much like I mentioned, they want to create a society pattern on a military dictatorship. They want to create cartel capitalist monopolies that control all the commerce in society, which just fits in the Rome's agenda of destroying the middle class. Because when you have monopolies everywhere, the middle class isn't that big.
Well, Eric and Alex, if I may say so, I was going to make a point before I was having some problems. As I said, in order for them to pull off this massive viral false flag, medical false flag called COVID-19 or whatever, pandemic, is they need to coordinate several different entities, intelligence, media, so forth. And I was trying to pull up some of my emails, but I'm okay. So the people who are narrating this, who are pushing this narrative, at least in the United States, and it's probably the similar situation in Canada and New Zealand, is your media outlets. Here in America, half a dozen corporations run 90% of the media: print, radio, television, film, music, film distribution, music distribution, radio stations, television stations. So, for example, one of the major news outlets is CNN, which is founded by Knight of Malta, Ted Turner, who's a Knight of St. John of Jerusalem. Another media outlet, which is supposed to be conservative, is Fox News, which is founded by Rupert Murdoch, who is a Knight of, I believe, of St. Gregory. So they control both sides. The current head of the New York Times, Mark Thompson, went to, I believe, Stonyhurst in England, and he used to be the head of the BBC. Now,
great point.
And of course, you can look at, and of course, you have several Knights of Malta on the Washington Post, and the CNN is basically run almost all your major newspapers since the 1950s under Operation Mockingbird.
Well, I'm
Now-
seeing with Washington Post is the Jeff Bezos owns that now outright. And he
Oh.
got $600 million from Catholics in Action, or also known as the CIA, back in 2017.
Oh,
600 million bucks. So Amazon ran they built the whole CIA cloud computing system, and of course now Jeff Bezos, who got this massive $600 million CIA contract, owns the Washington Post.
Okay.
May I,
But I don't just keep going, George. Just finish your point. But like you say, there's a massive conflict of interest at here where people think they're digesting real news, but it's all propaganda.
May I also add, Jeff Bezos owns Twitch as well. Twitch is a channel that caters to video gamers who want to stream, but there is a massive problem going on with Twitch. They've been allowing porn stars from Pornhub to perform on their channel in real life section. I left streaming Twitch in 2017 because the porn stars were performing. They were using video games as a cover just to play them and then either perform nude or topless. And I think Johnny Cerrucci in one of the team briefs covered Twitch as well.
That's great. I didn't realize Bezos was also the owner of Twitch. The great information. And, of course, I've documented Bezos that gives millions of dollars away to Catholic charities. He has a board, he has a seat on the board of the Pentagon. He brought Roman Catholic Secretary of Defense James Mattis back in 2018 to tour his big Amazon facilities. Gave him a big private tour. So Bezos, his wealth alone since this Jesuit pandemic started, I think his wealth has increased over $100 billion since this has started. He's worth over $200 billion now, officially. Which is madness. But we do got to wrap it up here just because it's getting late. But I appreciate you guys coming on. Is there anything else you'd want to summarize with them before we sign off here, guys?
So, yeah, if I may, Eric. Sorry, I wasn't able to make much of a contribution. Anyhow, so here it is. It's December 2020, December the 7th, December the 8th. Depending on where you are in the world, and the year is coming to a close. So something we'll need to discuss, I hope, before the end of the year is what is on the docket for 2021, and it doesn't look good. Now, a lot of people, particularly here in the States and even the UK, are hopeful because the vaccines are now available, or they will be in a matter of days, such as I believe they're rolling them out actually in the UK right now. And, this is another discussion altogether. So Pfizer, I guess, came out with a vaccine in the US, and it's about 95% effective. I believe Moderna is similar numbers. So, but nobody is talking about, because nobody knows, what are the long-term effects of these jabs? What's going to happen to people in a year or in a decade? And as I said, I'm in Northern California, and one of the things the various governors, such as Gavin Newsom here or Andrew Cuomo in New York, have said to justify all the rampant tyranny is the cases are increasing. They're worried that their hospitals and ICUs will be overwhelmed. Well, we have a fresh supply of victims, of people with respiratory problems here in California, because we've been subjected to massive bioengineering fire attacks the last 2 years, and particularly this year. The air quality in California was atrocious in much of October, and we had I'm not sure how many acreage or how many hectares are burnt, but something like over 1 million acres of land burnt in California. That's something like 40,000 hectares. You're talking about since September. and you're talking similar numbers across the Western United States. So you've had tens of millions of people breathing this toxic air for days on end. I mean, in October, we had several days where at noon it seemed like midnight because it was the Kim fog was so viscous. And of course, God only knows what that's going to do to your lungs. And of course, I have millions of people walking around with these muzzles on their faces. So that's going to further hamper their breathing.
No, you're definitely right there, George. Just even when I was in Los Angeles last year, I forget the name of the mountain there with the Hollywood sign is kind of like the Central Park in Los Angeles. But when I got up to the top and you overlooked and see the skyline, I thought like a thick cloud of smog over the entire city.
Oh, okay. So you have these.
Like you said, the air quality, definitely subpar to say the least.
Well, okay, but nobody's virtually talking about the nexus between that and people who are having respiratory problems in places like California. And it's not just California, it's Washington State, it's Oregon. As a matter of fact, according to Zach, Oregon was voted to have the worst air quality in the U.S. last year. And, and of course, they're using all these direct energy weapons to create these fires. There are a myriad of reasons as to why they're doing this, but these are not wildfires. So, and of course, you talked about the so-called Unpatriot Act, which was passed, 19 years ago, almost 20 years ago here in the U.S. So that basically eviscerated the remnants of the U.S. Constitution, specifically the Bill of Rights. Well, this corona hoax tyranny is basically doing a kill job of any sort of civil liberties we have in the U.S. And because, you have a myriad of things happening. I realize we use slightly different nomenclature in America. We usually will call our governmental entities departments or agencies. I know you call them ministries in Canada and New Zealand for the most part. Well, these state and local health departments have been weaponized. They've been used to terrorize small businesses to make sure that they're compliant with these thuggish orders. Hey, you need to close down, or you need to reduce your seating capacity, like to only 10% or 25%. Since July, California has not officially allowed any sort of indoor dining in restaurants. There are a few restaurants that are not complying, but those are few. I mean, those are few and far in between. So, prior to this whole operation, U.S. restaurants employed something like 11 million people. That's 3% of the aggregate U.S. population. I remember reading something in my local newspaper in March, and it said if the shutdown were to continue until May the 1st of this year, you're talking 7-8 months ago, 30% of the restaurants in California, or 30% of the eateries in California would go under. Now, at the time, there were about 90,000, so you're talking the destruction of 27,000. That was 7 months ago. So what this is doing is damaging and destroying these small businesses, nail salons, barber shops, jewelry stores, gyms, entertainment places like bowling alleys, cinemas, and so forth. Your few brick and mortar bookshops, they're all going to disappear because they cannot survive these draconian and, well, illegal and treasonous shutdowns, because they're operating on the principle that they're guilty until proven innocent. That, well, you know what, your business might be responsible for the spread of the corona hoax. Therefore, we're going to shut you down. And they say, well, you might be responsible, even though we have no proof whatsoever. I'm sorry. How's my audio?
Oh, you're loud and clear.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, anyhow, in the Event 201 simulation that was ran at Johns Hopkins last year in October, in this scenario, when they talked about the surprise outbreak, it was supposed to last a year and a half. So the World Health Organization officially declared this to be a pandemic on March the 11th of next year. So theoretically, the end date should be, well, around about September the 11th of next year, the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting if it plays out that way.
Well, and of course,
up on 9/11. There probably will be like a 9/11 because this is a huge Jesuit ritual that we're going through here. While you're talking, George, just I'm going to screen share this. I wasn't aware that this meeting took place. Like, it makes perfect sense. But in 2018, the Roman Catholic Tedros Adhanom, the Marxist Ethiopian terrorist who's not a doctor but who's now the chairman of the Jesuit-controlled World Health Organization, for the Director General, whatever his ridiculous title is. But here you got an article in October 23rd, 2018. The Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, has met with His Holiness Pope Francis. And they say here, isn't this amazing Jesuit doublespeak? They say health is a right and not a privilege. But there you got the meeting right there. I got the photo on the screen.
Well, if I can just re-emphasize a point that I just made, is in places like California, where I live, the health departments are basically on the local level calling the shots, even though they say it's Sacramento, our state capital. So they're working in tandem with other agencies. And so it is the health department, health officers and so forth say, oh, this business could be open, but this can't. Well, this business could be open, but these are the restrictions to which they have to adhere. And something else that is actually coming from Sacramento is something that Gavin Newsom introduced, or he was told to introduce, was something called Blueprint for a Safer Economy for California. So that basically means there's different levels of infection rates, number of cases, that is the number of cases per 100,000. And when I say that is, you go to somewhere and they say, oh yes, you have the corona hoax. Even though you never develop symptoms or get sick, you're a case. So they can now put you, and of course something we discussed months ago is these tests are highly inaccurate and unreliable, and you cannot possibly base public policy on them. But despite that, they're still using them. And of course, the whole thing is nothing more than a criminal enterprise. Something I've been saying for 6 months, if we hang Gavin Newsom, the corona hoax would disappear in California in 24 hours. And of course, if they do the same thing in New York, that would also happen. But
with this, the Jesuits gave Andrew Cuomo of Fordham an Emmy for his great Jesuit theater at the coronavirus press hearings. He got an Emmy for that. That should tell people, how incredible the Jesuit theater, this whole thing we're being subjected to is. You have a governor showing is he an actor too? Is he just acting? Because Emmys go to actors.
Well, I know, and of course, a similar thing happened with Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. She's Times Person of the Year or Woman of the Year. I know you did a video, probably several videos, a couple years ago on who has darkened the cover of Time magazine. Hitler, Stalin, Mao.
Even Jesuit trained Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister. Himmler, Jesuit trained Himmler, who modeled the SS off the Jesuits. Even he got a cover. Basically, the whole Nazi, communist, fascist gang.
Okay, so Gretchen is in good company. So basically, Gretchen
Actually, they're saying
Whitmer,
they gave Roman Catholic Hitler Man of the Year.
yes. Now, something we did on a show, a brief a few weeks ago, was the head of Michigan's health department is Brian Little, and he got his medical degree from Detroit Mercy. So he's the
Well,
one who's
that's Jesuit Detroit Mercy. So you got Jesuit trained Brian Little dictating medical policy for the whole state of Michigan.
Yes. So, and of course, even though a couple months ago the Michigan State Supreme Court in Lansing said, you know what, Governor Whitmer, your policies are legal. You've exceeded your authority, and she basically gave them a one-way sign to God. They said, well, thanks, your opinion is duly noted. So she just continued, barreling down the highway at Warp 9 and to try to destroy her states economically. And and I've seen a number of her press conferences and releases in which she said, our policies have saved lives. This virus doesn't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. We need to shut everything down. We need to destroy all these lives and businesses in order to.
And George, and Jesuit Pope Francis just came out this week that the vaccine can't be discriminatory just for rich people. Like everyone must take the vaccine, not just the rich.
Of course. Well, thank you, Jorge. You're well, that reassures me. But something that Bill Gates said at the very beginning of this, back in the spring, and I know it's about 1:30 in the morning your time, is we're not going to get to anywhere approaching normal until we've pretty much vaccinated the entire world. So you're talking probably on the order of 7 billion people out of close to 8 billion. And I remember I sent you a video link earlier or yesterday. Anthony Fauci was on the Andy Cuomo show, and there were, Tony and Nipples were yakking it up. So also a day or two ago, I guess Chris Cuomo, Andy's younger brother, who's on CNN, was talking about what's on the agenda for next year, and he said, well, I'm not sure how to put this to people. A lot of people are under the mistaken impression that once we all get our shots, this all will be over. We can take off our mask. We don't have to distance. No. You're talking. This is probably going to require several shots, at a minimum of 2, maybe 3 or 4 a year. And you're talking probably.
Jesuit Cuomo said that 3 or 4 shots a year. Wow, that's wow.
Chris, and he said, and of course, it could take well over a year to vaccinate the majority of Americans, because he's an American journalist. And you're talking like jabbing 1 or 2 million people a day on average. Well, and of course, something that Fauci said before is, the whole mask may become a permanent item because of.
It's incredible because Jesuit Tony Fauci, back in when was this, April? The videos all over the internet. He said that wearing a mask is useless. He actually slipped up and told the truth about it. Mm-hmm. And then as a Jesuit, he does a complete 180, and now he says, "Oh, we have to wear a mask forever. You have to even wear a mask when you're in your house." But people can find that video. He said that, and he had the same quote talking about the PCR test. He admitted that the PCR test was completely unreliable, back like 8 or 9 months ago, and now he's all about testing. Just Jesuitism to a T.
I know we talked about this probably close to a year ago, and was it Wolmer? Robert Wolmer exposed Fauci and Gallo 25 years ago as a fraud, because both Gallo and Fauci were involved with the AIDS scandal in the 1980s with AZT or AZT, as you would say. So Fauci was responsible for the death of at least thousands of people, mostly men, homosexuals, and HIV users. However, people
absolutely.
I mean, people. Okay, people. I know there's a cliche, and I hope this is only an American problem. But people talk about how dumbed down we've become. Fauci's history prior to this has basically been whitewashed. He didn't exist prior to
George, I would
coronavirus.
say I'd just go bigger, just to kind of go back to the Pol Pot year zero, which the Jesuits. That's a whole other topic. But Pol Pot educated by Jesuits in France. But we're kind of doing like a year zero reset with COVID. With nothing existed like prior to COVID.
Well,
I was reading the site Zero Hedge actually has some good articles up just on the ridiculousness of like one by his doctor Pascal Sacre. I recommend. It's titled "The COVID-19 RT-PCR Test: How to Mislead All Humanity into Accepting Societal Lockdowns." That one was pretty good there. But or is there? Do you want to jump in, George?
Well, yes.
This article.
Okay. Well, Alex was going to say something, I believe.
Yeah, I was wanting to mention. George, were you doing the team brief called Masters of Perversion with Johnny a while back?
Probably. I don't remember the. There's a good chance I was.
I got some recent news. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar that Paul Shanley recently died. I think the co-founder of NAMBLA.
Oh, okay. When he does the show on Mondays, or at least when it's Monday in the U.S., I usually will miss the first hour because I'm doing something else. So I don't, he may have mentioned that.
I think they didn't mention the cause of death, but I think it was around late October or something. They said Paul Shanley was found dead, and it was reported on Fox News.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go look into that. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Anyhow, it's after 1:30 in the morning Eastern U.S. or Eastern in the North America. Anyhow, if I may say so, this does not look good. So as I said, Fauci was on with Chris Cuomo back in May. He was also on with Andrew Cuomo today. Also earlier today, Chris Cuomo was talking about what's going to be going on next year. Both Chris Cuomo and Anthony Fauci said that this is going to be the new normal, the new abnormal, that we're all basically in the developed world are going to be having to leave with these muzzles on our faces because of the next, for a myriad of reasons. Because just because you get the jab, that doesn't mean.
Well, it'll be like the fifth wave, or the third wave, and the fourth wave, and the fifth wave, and the sixth wave, and the seventh wave.
And of course,
we mentioned briefly, just in Hong Kong now, George, we're already gaslighting the people about a fourth wave in Hong Kong.
And of course, or they can just come up with a whole nother illness. They can call it the Dos Equis virus or whatever. Just making a pun on Corona beer. I know you and Zach actually talked about that and how they're foreshadowing this with the Brett Kavanaugh hearings a couple of years ago in the U.S. They were not gaslight. They were engaging in predictive programming. So the tyranny has no end. And here in America, we have the U.S. Constitution, federal laws, state laws, and things like that, state constitutions. But that doesn't matter because we're in a health crisis. We're in an emergency. We're dealing with COVID-19. Well, hey, you just had to put up with a temporary inconvenience of wearing that muzzle, staying 6 feet apart, not shaking hands, having your temperature taken at work, having just about anything that's fun or desirable, shut down. But it's for your own good. This is something we were discussing when we were doing the show earlier on the brief with Nick, Mitch, and Johnny, and Felipe was briefly with us. Was the whole idea of how many okay, but this is my last point. How many building sevens have there been in this whole narrative? I mean, for the first time in medical history, healthy people are now a threat to the health of the general public. For the first time, people who have no symptoms can make other people sick. For the first time, healthy people are not only recommended but almost required to wear a mask, because even though you're healthy, you may endanger the lives of others. And private businesses are now engaged or are de facto governmental entities. They're the police and they're doctors. That barista who's working at your local Starbucks, who may be making $10, $12 an hour, now has the authority to tell you to wear a mask. Also, that hairstylist who may be making the same money also can take your temperature and require that your temperature be taken before she cuts your hair. Wow.
They're calling this now COVID passports. That's the terminology being used.
So this has been incremental. They've been rolling things out like roughly every month or so, or every other month. First, it was the distancing, the 2 meters or 6 feet apart, or whatever the standard is in your particular country. Then it was the mask. Then after that, it was the temperature reading, and that has not been standardized. That's more for employers. So these companies most companies in California, businesses, even though this is illegal, are requiring a minimum of 2 medical interventions. One, that you wear a mask, and 2, that you have your temperature taken. So what do they want? Do they want you to, give a blood sample, give a urine sample before you go to work every day? Also, another part of that is the testing. That's mostly done in the medical field, but these professional athletes have had to get tested usually at least once a week. Of course, we'll have to do another show, Eric, where we talk about the whole stupidity with professional sports this year.
Oh, definitely. I think that would be a great topic. Also, I think we could go into kind of the agitation that's being created in the U.S. right now with the election, with Trump and Biden. We can comment on what we think is going to go on with that. We didn't touch the election too much tonight, but that would be a good topic for a future stream. And even if we could go into detail, like kind of specifics with the PCR test and why it's completely fraudulent. I linked some articles in the chat so people can read up on that by some doctors explaining it. But we could, because the biggest fraud I think in all of this is the testing. It's creating like the illusion or the perception that the sky is falling when everything is completely fine.
And of course.
In the next joint stream, I'll probably cover something I found on Jerry Brown, the Jesuit-trained governor of California.
Okay. Yes.
What was that? Oh, Jerry Brown you mentioned?
Yeah. I think George might be familiar since he lives in California. Is George familiar with a group called Synanon or Synanon?
Yes. Yes, they were popular back in the 1970s and 80s. They're like, I'm not too familiar with them, but I'm sure they say, when they're smoked, they're usually a Jesuit with a book of matches.
Actually, the founder of Synanon, Charles E. Dedrick, attended Jesuit-controlled Notre Dame.
Oh, okay, boy. I'll need to go look into that. Well, thank you for that tip,
And
Alex.
also,
Oh, Griffin, I just mentioned this. People aren't aware. Jerry Brown was like a literal Jesuit who was the governor of California. Went through Jesuit seminary, Jesuit to St. Ignatius High School, Santa Clara University, and Sacred Heart Jesuit novitiate. Good friends with Jim Jones of the People's Temple.
Okay, if I
hang on,
could mention one.
Very deviant to say the least. And now Gavin Newsom is or Jerry passed down the Jesuit torch to Gavin Newsom.
Well,
Gavin
and of
Newsom's
course-
doing a great job. He was caught eating at that like $300, $500 a plate dinner without his mask on with all of his rich buddies. Like last week, right after he issued orders for everyone to stay at home. And I don't know if you heard, George, just recently, the Jesuit-educated mayor of San Francisco, London Breed, she was caught doing the exact same thing.
Well, and of course, boy, I hope the food is good there. Even though it's almost in my backyard, it's like maybe 20 miles or like 32 kilometers or so from where I live. I've never actually been there. I've been by there, but I've never actually been there. That reminds me, did you know that Rudy Giuliani tested positive for the corona hoax? So he might get sick. And, he probably caught it from Donald Trump.
Yeah, I saw that. That was some
actually,
incredible. This thing is incredibly controlled from both
can
sides.
I, al-
Of course,
I
they say
wanted to-
Rudy Giuliani is a devout Roman Catholic. People aren't aware. And
actually,
he was strategically placed as the mayor of New York at the time of 9/11. But we should get going here. Do you have anything to close up with, Alex?
I
in the
need to
next
jump
stream,
out.
And you too, George, if you want to finish up your thought before we sign off, feel free.
in the next stream, I'll talk about Synanon. I've just DM'd you the link on Discord, Eric. On the founder Charles E. Dedrich, and I think it might be good to have George in the next joint stream as well, because since he lives in California, and from what I found on Charles E. Dedrich, there is Jesuit breadcrumbs on him. He was also involved with Norman the Dodd, or hang on, I'll have a look. Charles E. Dedrich was also involved with Thomas Dodd from Connecticut and Jerry Brown as well. And he was also involved with Timothy Leary.
Okay, the Jesuit, Timothy Francis Leary. Okay, so I actually need to jump off, fellas. I mean, it's a little bit earlier here, but I actually had to go to bed. So thank you, Eric, for having me on, and thank you, Alex, for joining with us. Have a good evening, have a good morning, have a good afternoon, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you,
No, it's
George.
great seeing you, George. And just before you go, I was curious, I typed in Pope Francis, Klaus Schwab right on the internet, and it comes right up from the Vatican website that Pope Francis gave a personal message to Klaus Schwab that's published for everyone to see back in 2014. But his called Message of His Holiness Pope Francis to Professor Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab, of course, the head of the World Economic Forum, Roman Catholic Klaus Schwab, affiliated with Opus Dei, who speaks at I got him documented speaking at the Jesuit Boston College CEOs Club back in 2018. For instance, this guy follows Pope Francis on Twitter. So this guy's a Roman Catholic, taking orders from the Jesuits, putting out the ideology of the quote Great Reset. But just from this message here that Pope Francis sent it back in 2014, you see how close these two men are. Which I think is a very important dynamic going on in the world today. So yes, we'll bring up Klaus Schwab as well up on the next stream. World Economic Forum and more of these intergovernmental organizations which dictate foreign policy on behest of the Pope.
Well, if I may say so, Schwab was born in 1938. He founded the World Economic Forum in 1971 at the age of 33. I repeat, he was 33 years old. And of course, this is something that's more like Zach's bailiwick. He's more into the numbers. However, it's interesting. Another company that got started that year was Starbucks. I know we've talked about this before. They were started in Seattle, Washington. One of the co-founders of that company was Gordon Belker, who got his undergraduate degree from the University of San Francisco. He also went to a Catholic high school in Seattle. I don't recall the name of it. But one of the members of the board of directors for Starbucks is Melody Hobson, the current wife of George Lucas. She went to Ignatius Preparatory School in Chicago. Now, as I said, Starbucks was founded in 1971, almost half a century ago, in Seattle. So you could say that they're basically the coffee version of Walmart. They basically go to towns and they destroy the local mom and pop coffee shops or cafes. And they didn't really start doing this in earnest until the 1990s. But that is also where, among other things, Microsoft is located. And if you look at the logo of Starbucks, they have what is called a siren, which is like a mermaid. It's a mythical Greek figure who was she sang in the ocean and she lured mariners to their death because they're struck by her voice and by her beauty. Well, in the original logo, it was the original image was sanitized. She was bare-chested, but then to make it more mainstream and to help sell it around the country and the world, they basically re-edited it to where you don't see her top, you just see her face. So,
sorry, I need to drop out because I'm having dinner. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, bon appetit.
Yep.
So anyhow, so they basically, so Starbucks is one of the few corporations, is one of the corporations that's doing well. The aforementioned Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, and I realize you may not have these same companies in Canada, but something you mentioned months ago, but the way things are going, there'll probably be less than 100 corporations running the entire world. Your mom and pop businesses will be gone probably the next year or so because they just cannot survive all these shutdowns and restrictions.
Absolutely, and then it's all pre-planned that way. All the wealth and power is going into the massive mega monopolies that the Jesuits control themselves. For instance, another example, the Apple Computer Company, co-founded by a Jesuit trained at Santa Clara, A.C. Markula Jr. He's kind of the unknown founder of Apple alongside Steve Jobs for the reason of his Jesuit background. And I would say just in terms of the big tech at Silicon Valley, the Jesuits at Santa Clara University, and Seattle is kind of its own like Silicon Valley with Amazon and Microsoft stationed there, but the Jesuits at Seattle University control those two corporations.
Well, something that Nick mentioned a couple weeks ago was Jeff Bezos' father, or I'm not sure if he was his birth father or adopted father, was from Cuba, and he went to one of the same schools where Fidel Castro attended. So,
oh wow, wow, great find! One of those Jesuit schools in Cuba. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, Castro went to 3, and didn't you mention it was not Donovan? It was Galen who recommended Donovan that the CIA install Castro because he was triple dipped by the Jesuits.
Oh yeah, it's essentially Galen was saying that that was the reason that the Americans didn't overthrow Castro, saying that the Americans could have easily done it. If they wanted to, and they said that Batista was framed by the international press as like a worse monster, like a worse villain than he was. Wasn't a great guy, but he was framed as like a, just like an absolute brutal tyrant. But he said that, and that paved the way for Castro to come in. But Galen was saying that this all happened because Castro had a quote devout Jesuit schooling.
Well, it's just like 100 years ago with the Romanovs in Russia. Yes, they were brutal, they're corrupt, but the Bolsheviks were like 10,000 times worse. Well, I do. We'll have to put this up soon because I do have to be going. So, well, God bless, Eric, and I'll talk to you soon.
Oh, God bless, George. Great chat. And just to finish up your last point, that's what the Jesuits installed Felix Dzerzhinsky, Polish Roman Catholic, as the head of the Bolshevik secret police, the Cheka. Dzerzhinsky actually himself wanted to become a Jesuit priest.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
very fitting.
We can go on for another 3 hours just on the Russian Revolution, and perhaps we can do that when we're streaming it. So, take care.
Yeah, take care, George. Nice chatting with you.
Likewise.
I'll see you soon.